She's 13 years old, sitting in her childhood bedroom. No studio, no producer, just a laptop, a cheap microphone, and a brother who believes in her. They upload a song to SoundCloud. By morning, everything has changed. By the end of the week, the world is obsessed. This is not a normal story. This is Billie Eilish. Picture this: Highland Park, Los Angeles, 2015. A tiny bedroom with posters on the walls and clothes on the floor. Nothing fancy, nothing polished, just raw creativity and a girl who's about to break every single rule the music industry ever made. The song is called Ocean Eyes. It wasn't supposed to be released. It was just homework, a dance assignment for her teacher. But her brother Phineas said, "Let's just put it out there and see what happens." What happened was a revolution. Within days, the song hit 1 million plays. Within weeks, record labels were calling. Within months, Billie Eilish went from homeschooled kid to the most talked about artist on the planet. But here's what nobody tells you. Here's the part that gets lost in all the hype, and the Grammys, and the sold-out stadiums. The success almost destroyed her. See, this isn't a story about overnight success. Not really. This is a story about a girl who turned her depression, her anxiety, her absolute anguish into music that spoke to millions of kids who felt exactly the same way. This is about pain becoming art, about darkness becoming light, about vulnerability becoming power. Before we dive into the deep end, hit that subscribe button, because this story goes places you won't expect. Dark places, real places, the kind of truth that doesn't make it into magazine covers. Let's get into it. Billie didn't want to be famous. That's the first thing you need to understand. She wanted to dance. She wanted to make music with her brother in their bedroom, and maybe perform at some local shows. But the universe had different plans. And when Ocean Eyes exploded, she was thrust into a spotlight she never asked for, at an age when most kids are worried about algebra tests and whether their crush likes them back. Her parents, Maggie and Patrick, weren't typical stage parents. They were artists themselves, musicians and actors who understood the industry's darkness. They homeschooled both Billie and Phineas, encouraging creativity over conformity. The bedroom where Billie and Phineas made music wasn't some fancy home studio. It was literally Phineas's childhood bedroom. They recorded vocals in a closet to get better sound. They used free software. They had no budget. They had no team. They just had each other and an obsessive need to create something real. What made Ocean Eyes different? It wasn't trying to sound like anything else. It wasn't chasing trends. It was just honest, painfully honest. A 13-year-old girl singing about emotions she barely understood yet. And somehow, that honesty cut through all the noise. In an industry full of manufactured pop stars, with teams of writers and producers, here was this kid making music that sounded like it came from another dimension. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, when did you first hear Billie Eilish? What was the song? And more importantly, how did it make you feel? Because that's what this whole story is about. Feeling. Raw, unfiltered, sometimes uncomfortable feeling. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because success, especially at that age, comes with a price. And Billie was about to learn just how expensive fame really is. Imagine being 14 years old and having millions of people watching your every move. Every outfit choice analyzed. Every word scrutinized. Every photo dissected. Now imagine dealing with that while your brain is still developing, while you're still figuring out who you are. That was Billie's reality. And it was crushing her. 2016, 1 year after Ocean Eyes. Billie is no longer just some kid from LA. She's a phenomenon. Music blogs are calling her the future. Fans are camping outside her house. The pressure is building. And she's still just a teenager trying to navigate high school emotions without actually going to high school. The isolation is real. The anxiety is overwhelming. And nobody knows how to handle it because nobody's been through this exact situation before. Here's what the headlines didn't tell you. Behind the rapidly growing fan base and the viral moments, Billie was struggling. Badly. She's talked about it since, in interviews where she's been brave enough to be vulnerable. Depression wasn't new to her. She dealt with it before fame. But fame amplified everything. Made it louder, made it heavier, made it impossible to escape. She couldn't go outside without being recognized. Couldn't post anything online without thousands of opinions flooding in. Couldn't be a normal kid because normal didn't exist anymore. And the worst part? She felt guilty about struggling. Because how can you complain when millions of people would kill to be in your position? How can you say you're suffering when you're living the dream? That's the trap. That's the thing about young fame that destroys people. The world sees the success and thinks you should be grateful. But they don't see the panic attacks. They don't see the nights where you can't sleep because the pressure is suffocating. They don't see the moments where you wonder if any of this is worth it. Phineas became her anchor. He was older, more grounded, and he understood that the music had to come from a real place, or it meant nothing. They made a pact. No matter how big this got, they would never compromise the honesty. Never water down the darkness. Never pretend everything was okay when it wasn't. That decision would define everything that came next. And right now, I want you to do something. Pause for a second. Hit that like button if you've ever felt pressure you couldn't handle. If you've ever felt like you were drowning while everyone around you thought you were swimming. This story is for you. In 2017, Billie released her debut EP, Don't Smile at Me. The title alone tells you everything about her mindset. She wasn't interested in playing the game, wasn't interested in being palatable or safe or what the industry expected from a teenage girl. The EP was dark, moody, confrontational. Songs about toxic relationships, about feeling numb, about wanting to disappear. And kids everywhere lost their minds over it because finally, someone was saying the quiet parts out loud. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Some called it genius. Others said it was too dark for mainstream success. They were all wrong. Because mainstream success isn't about being happy and shiny anymore. It's about being real. And Billie Eilish was the realest thing pop music had seen in decades. But authenticity comes with consequences. And Billie was about to face the darkest consequence of all, becoming a target. She wore baggy clothes, oversized hoodies, pants that looked like they belonged to someone twice her size. The internet lost its collective mind. Why does she dress like that? Is she hiding something? She'd be so pretty if she just dressed normal. The comments were endless, cruel, invasive. And Billie? She was making a statement the world wasn't ready to hear. Let's talk about the clothes. Because this isn't about fashion. This is about control. About a teenage girl taking back power in the only way she could. In every interview, on every red carpet, people asked about the baggy clothes, and her answer was simple, devastating, and brilliant. Nobody can have an opinion because they haven't seen what's underneath. Think about that. A 16-year-old girl understanding that her body would be sexualized, criticized, objectified, and deciding to remove it from the equation entirely. While other young female artists were pressured to show more skin, to be sexy, to perform sexuality for an audience, Billie said no. Not just no, hell no. And she turned it into a visual identity so strong that it became iconic. But the pushback was intense. Fashion critics said she wasn't trying. Body shamers said she must be hiding weight. Conspiracy theorists made up wild stories about what she was concealing. The noise was deafening. And through it all, Billie kept wearing what made her comfortable, kept making music that made her happy, kept refusing to play by anyone's rules but her own. Then came the real test. The photo shoots, the magazine covers, the pressure to grow up and show more as she got older. The industry has this gross progression they push on young female artists. Start cute, get sexy, become a woman, sell more records. It's formulaic, it's exploitative. And Billie saw right through it. She's told stories about photo shoots where stylists tried to put her in revealing outfits, where photographers suggested she'd look better in something tighter, where label executives hinted that her image might be holding her back commercially. And every single time, she said no. Not because she was against showing her body if she wanted to, but because she refused to do it on anyone's terms but her own. Comment below. Have you ever felt pressure to change who you are to fit in? To be more like what others expected? Let's talk about it. Because this is bigger than Billie. This is about all of us. The baggy clothes became armor. Protection against a world that wanted to consume her, sexualize her, turn her into a product. And the brilliant part, it worked. She became the biggest artist on the planet while revealing less than anyone else. She proved you didn't need to sell sex to sell records. You just needed to be undeniably, unapologetically yourself. But while she was fighting external battles about image and expectations, an internal war was raging. And that war was about to explode into the most successful album of her generation. 2019. Billie is 17 years old. She's about to release her debut album. The pressure is unimaginable. The EP was successful, but albums are different. Albums define careers. Albums separate one-hit wonders from legends. And everyone is watching to see if this weird, dark, baggy clothes-wearing kid from LA can actually deliver. The album is called When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Even the title is a question steeped in existential dread. It's not Party All Night, or Love Story, or any of the safe, marketable garbage the industry usually pushes. It's a question about death, about consciousness, about the void. And it's perfect. Here's what nobody expected. The album was recorded entirely in that same bedroom, Phineas's childhood room. While other artists were booking million-dollar studios, hiring celebrity producers, assembling teams of writers, Billie and Phineas were making magic in a 10x10 space with minimal equipment. The album's sonic quality rivals anything made in a professional studio. Because talent doesn't need expensive gear. Talent needs passion and vision and the courage to do something different. The first single, Bury a Friend, was intentionally disturbing. The music video showed Billie as a monster under the bed, as the thing you're afraid of in the dark. It was confrontational, unsettling, and absolutely brilliant. Because Billie understood something crucial. She wasn't trying to be likable. She was trying to be real. And real isn't always pretty. Track after track, the album dove into darkness, depression, suicidal thoughts, toxic relationships, drug use, sleep paralysis, the things teenagers actually deal with but are told to keep quiet about, the things that make adults uncomfortable but are daily realities for millions of kids. And Billie put it all on display with zero filter and zero apology. Critics called it groundbreaking, called it the voice of a generation, called it proof that pop music could be art. But more importantly, kids called it their life, called it the first time they felt understood, called it the album that made them feel less alone. That's the real success, not the chart positions or the sales numbers. The connection. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story is about to take some wild turns, and you're going to want to follow the whole journey. Now let's talk about what happened when the album dropped. March 29th, 2019. Release day. The album debuts at #1 in 17 countries. Not just successful, dominant. Every single track charts. Streaming records shatter. The kid who recorded in her bedroom just conquered the world. But conquering the world comes with expectations. And expectations, for someone dealing with anxiety and depression, can feel like drowning. Suddenly, Billie had to tour, had to do press, had to be on all the time. had to be Billie Eilish the brand, not Billie Eilish the person. And the gap between those two versions was tearing her apart. In interviews, you could see the exhaustion, the way her smile didn't always reach her eyes, the way her answers got shorter when people asked intrusive questions about her mental health. Because here's the cruel irony. She made an album about depression and anxiety, and the success of that album made her depression and anxiety worse. The thing that was supposed to help became another source of pain, and millions of fans who connected with that pain had no idea she was drowning just off stage. But the biggest test was still coming, and it would happen on the biggest stage in music. January 26, 2020, the 62nd Annual Grammy Awards. Billie Eilish is 18 years old, sitting in an audience full of music industry veterans, legends, and competitors. She's nominated in the Big Four categories: Record of the Year, Album of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best New Artist. Winning even one would be career-defining. But what's about to happen has only occurred twice before in Grammy history. She wins Record of the Year. The room erupts. She looks shocked, genuinely shocked, like she can't believe it's real. Then, Song of the Year. Her hands are shaking as she accepts. Then, Best New Artist. She's crying now, overwhelmed. And finally, Album of the Year. A clean sweep. All four major categories. At 18 years old, the youngest artist ever to achieve this. The third artist in history to win all four in one night. She didn't just succeed, she dominated. But watch her acceptance speeches. Really watch them. There's no arrogance. No, I knew I would win energy. She looks terrified. She keeps saying other artists deserved it more. She looks at Phineas like she needs him to confirm this is really happening. Because in her mind, she's still that kid making music in a bedroom. She's still the girl who never expected any of this. The moment that went viral wasn't her winning, though. It was her reaction when they announced Album of the Year. The camera caught her mouthing, "Please don't be me," before they said her name. And when they did, her face showed pure shock mixed with something else. Guilt? Discomfort? Like she didn't feel she deserved to be standing there holding that trophy. In her acceptance speech for Album of the Year, she did something unprecedented. She looked directly at Ariana Grande and said she deserved the award more. Think about that. In the biggest moment of her career, on the biggest stage in music, she deflected credit. Not out of false modesty, out of genuine belief that she wasn't worthy. That's not a humble brag. That's imposter syndrome on a global scale. Drop a comment. Have you ever achieved something amazing, but felt like you didn't deserve it? Like it was a mistake or luck? That's imposter syndrome. And Billie's speech showed millions of people they weren't alone in feeling that way. Behind the scenes, according to later interviews, Billie was having panic attacks. The pressure of the night, the weight of expectations, the discomfort of being the center of attention, it was all crushing her. She kept stepping outside to breathe, kept trying to ground herself, kept reminding herself it would be over soon. The media called it the night Billie Eilish became a superstar. But for Billie, it was the night the cage got smaller. Because now she wasn't just successful. She was historically successful. And that meant everyone would be watching to see if she could do it again. If she was a fluke. If the darkness that made her famous was sustainable, or just a phase. The pressure was about to multiply. Because the world wanted more. And Billie wasn't sure she had more to give. February 2021. A documentary called Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry drops on Apple TV+. It's not a fluff piece. It's not a celebration. It's a brutally honest 140-minute look at what success actually costs. And what it reveals is heartbreaking. The documentary follows Billie from 16 to 18, the most crucial years of the rise. And it shows everything: the creative process, the family dynamics, the tour exhaustion, but most importantly, it shows the pain. The real, unfiltered pain of being that young and dealing with that much pressure. There are moments where she's crying in her bedroom, overwhelmed. Moments where she snaps at her parents from stress. Moments where you can see the weight literally crushing her. One scene stands out. Billie is on tour, and she's dealing with a physical injury. Her body is breaking down from the constant performances. She's in visible pain, and she has to go on stage and perform like everything's fine. The camera catches her backstage, tears streaming, saying she doesn't know if she can do this anymore. Then the music starts, and she walks out, and she performs flawlessly. That's the mask. That's what the audience never sees. Another devastating moment. Billie talking about body image. Despite the baggy clothes, despite the attempts to control the narrative, she reveals she's still deeply insecure about her body. Still reads the comments. Still lets the criticism get to her. She talks about wanting to disappear sometimes, about feeling trapped in her own fame, about wondering if any of this is worth it. The documentary also shows her relationship with her parents, which is complicated. They're supportive, but they're also struggling with the machine they've helped create. They want to protect their daughter, but she's also their boss in many ways. The breadwinner, the one making decisions that affect the whole family. That dynamic is messy and difficult, and the documentary doesn't shy away from it. Phineas's role becomes even clearer. He's not just her brother and producer. He's her protector, her therapist, her reality check. When she's spiraling, he's the one who pulls her back. When she doubts herself, he reminds her why she started. Their relationship is the heart of everything, and the documentary shows how much pressure that puts on both of them. If you're still watching, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're about to talk about what happened when Billie decided to break her own rules. Critics praise the documentary for its honesty, for showing what fame actually looks like behind the curtain. But some fans were disturbed. They didn't want to know their idol was struggling. They wanted the fantasy. They wanted to believe success equals happiness. The documentary shattered that illusion completely. Billie's decision to let cameras document her at her lowest points was brave, but it was also strategic. She was taking control of the narrative again, saying, "This is who I really am," before anyone could twist it into something else. It was vulnerability as armor, honesty as protection. But the documentary also revealed something the public wasn't prepared for. Billie was exhausted, burned out, and she was only 18 years old. The question everyone started asking was, how much longer can she sustain this? How much more can she take before she breaks completely? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected. 2021. Billie Eilish does something that shocks everyone. She posts a photo on Instagram. Nothing unusual about that, except this photo is different. She's wearing something fitted, something that shows her body shape. The baggy clothes are gone, and the internet absolutely loses its mind. The photo gets millions of likes and millions of comments within hours. Some fans celebrate, some feel betrayed, some accuse her of selling out, of giving in to industry pressure. Others defend her right to dress however she wants. The discourse is loud, messy, and completely misses the point. Because this wasn't about clothes. This was about evolution. In an interview shortly after, Billie addressed it head-on. She said something that silenced a lot of the criticism. "I can be both. I can wear baggy clothes, and I can wear tight clothes. It's my body." The point was never to hide forever. The point was to not let you dictate when and how you see it. And now I'm choosing. Me, not you. That's power. That's someone who spent years being defined by one choice, finally saying, "I contain multitudes." She wasn't rejecting her past self. She was expanding beyond it. And the fact that people were mad about it proved exactly why she made those initial choices in the first place. Because people feel entitled to her body, to her image, to her choices. And she was reminding everyone that she owes them nothing. But the change went deeper than clothes. Her hair, which had been her signature green and black, went blonde. a dramatic transformation. And with it came a new era, a new sound, a new perspective. She was growing up, and she was doing it publicly, messily, honestly, the way most people grow up, but without millions watching and commenting on every change. The second album was coming, Happier Than Ever, and the title alone told you everything had shifted. After years of diving into darkness, Billie was trying to find light, not manufactured happiness, not fake positivity, but real, complicated, messy growth. And that growth meant confronting things she'd been avoiding. Comment below. Have you ever outgrown a version of yourself? Have you ever changed and dealt with people who wanted you to stay the same? Let's talk about it. The lead up to the album was different. The visuals were different. Everything felt more mature, more complex. And fans were divided. Some wanted the dark Billie back. Some celebrated the evolution. But Billie wasn't making music for fans anymore. She was making it for herself. And that shift, that reclaiming of the creative process as personal therapy rather than public performance, was crucial for her survival. Happier Than Ever wasn't just an album title. It was a mission statement. After years of pain becoming art, Billie was asking, can healing become art too? Can growth be just as interesting as suffering? Can you build a career on getting better instead of staying broken? The answer would define her next chapter. Track 11 on Happier Than Ever. The title track. It starts quiet, soft, almost sweet. Billie's voice is gentle, singing about a relationship that seems complicated but manageable. And then, around the 2-minute mark, everything explodes. The song transforms into a screaming, guitar-heavy confrontation. And in that moment, Billie Eilish releases years of pent-up rage. The song isn't subtle. It's not coded. It's direct anger at someone who used her, manipulated her, made her feel small. And while she's never confirmed exactly who it's about, the specificity suggests it's painfully personal. Lines about being made to feel crazy, about someone taking credit for her success, about being controlled and gaslit. This isn't abstract. This is someone processing trauma in real time through music. The guitar breakdown is cathartic, not just for Billie, but for everyone listening. Because how many people have wanted to scream at someone who hurt them? How many people have been told to be quiet, be nice, don't make a scene? And here's Billie Eilish, the voice of a generation, screaming loud enough for everyone who couldn't. The music video shows her in the rain, getting drenched, looking exhausted but free. The symbolism is clear, washing away the old version, letting the storm cleanse. There's no dancing, no elaborate production, just Billie, the rain, and the rage. It's raw and uncomfortable and absolutely necessary. Critics called it one of the best songs of the year. Fans called it a masterpiece. But more importantly, survivors of toxic relationships called it their anthem. People who'd been gaslit and manipulated heard their story in her words. That's the power of specificity in art. By being personal, she became universal. The album as a whole dealt with themes of fame, exploitation, toxic relationships, and finally, self-reclamation. It was a journey from darkness to something resembling light. Not happiness in the Instagram sense, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally saying what you need to say and not caring who it hurts. Smash that subscribe button if you're feeling this story. We're getting close to the end, and you don't want to miss how this all comes together. Happier Than Ever debuted at number 1. But this time, the success felt different to Billie. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't suffocating. Because she'd made the album on her terms, said what she needed to say, and the validation was just a bonus. She'd learned the hardest lesson. You can't make art to please people. You have to make it to survive. The tour for the album was different too. More theatrical, more confident, more in control. Billie on stage wasn't the scared 16-year-old anymore. She was a woman who'd been through hell, survived, and come out stronger. The baggy clothes were still there sometimes, but so were other styles. She contained multitudes now. She was both and everything in between. But evolution is never finished. And Billie's next challenge would be the most difficult yet, staying relevant without sacrificing authenticity. Here's the thing about being the voice of a generation. Generations are short. TikTok moves fast. Trends die overnight. The kids who made you famous at 15 are 20 now. And there's a new wave of teenagers with new icons. And Billie Eilish, at 22, is facing the question every young artist eventually faces. What happens when your generation moves on? 2023 and 2024 brought new challenges. New artists were emerging with sounds influenced by what Billie pioneered. Dark pop, bedroom production, radical honesty. She'd opened a door, and now everyone was walking through it. The originality that made her special was becoming the norm. So how do you stay special when everyone's copying your playbook? Some artists panic. They chase trends. They rebrand desperately. They try to recapture what made them famous initially. But Billie did something different. She went quieter. Not literally in the music, but in the approach. Less social media, less spectacle, more focus on the craft. She let the noise die down so she could hear herself again. She also started speaking more openly about the toll fame took. In interviews, she talked about wishing she could go back and tell her younger self to slow down, about regretting not having a normal teenage experience, about the panic attacks and the therapy and the constant struggle to separate Billie, the person, from Billie Eilish, the brand. That vulnerability, that willingness to say, "This hurt me," resonated even with people who'd moved on musically. The third album is in process, and the question isn't whether it'll be commercially successful. She's proven she can do that. The question is, who is Billie Eilish when she's not trying to be anyone? When the pressure is off, when she's making music just to make music. That's the ultimate artistic challenge. Comment your thoughts. Can artists stay relevant without selling out? Can you evolve without betraying what made you special? This is the question every artist eventually faces. But here's what makes Billie different from so many artists who came before. She's already done the hardest part. She's already survived the thing that destroys most people. She survived fame at its most intense, at the most vulnerable age, and came out intact. Not unchanged. Intact. That's rare. That's special. She's also built something more sustainable, a creative partnership with Phineas that's based on trust, not trends. A family support system that's honest, not exploitative. A fan base that grew up with her and understands evolution. And most importantly, a sense of self that's no longer dependent on public approval. The teenage girl who made music in her bedroom to process pain has become a woman who makes music because she can't not make it. That's the difference. That's growth. And that's the foundation for longevity in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. So what's next? What does the future hold for someone who's already achieved more than most artists dream of? Let's talk about legacy. So here we are. The end of the story. Except it's not really the end, is it? Because Billie Eilish is only in her early 20s. The majority of her career is still ahead of her. But what she's already accomplished, what she's already meant to millions of people, that's permanent. That's legacy. Think about what she actually did. She took the pain of a generation and turned it into anthems. She showed millions of kids that depression isn't weakness. That anxiety isn't something to hide. That darkness can be beautiful. That being different isn't just okay, it's powerful. She didn't tell them to smile and pretend everything was fine. She told them the truth. Sometimes, everything isn't fine, and that's real, and you're not alone. She also fundamentally changed what a female pop star could be. Before Billie, there was a template. Be sexy, be available, be palatable. Perform femininity in a way that makes everyone comfortable. She rejected all of it, wore what she wanted, said what she thought, refused to play the game, and she became one of the biggest stars on the planet doing exactly that. She proved you don't need to compromise yourself to succeed. You just need to be undeniably, authentically you. The bedroom production revolution she helped start has changed the industry forever. You don't need a major label budget anymore. You don't need expensive studios. You need talent, vision, and a laptop. She proved it. And now countless artists are following that path, making music on their own terms, in their own spaces, with their own voices. That's a tangible change. That's impact. But the real legacy, the one that matters most, is the conversation she started. About mental health, about body image, about the cost of fame, about growing up in public, about the pressure on young women, about authenticity in a world that constantly demands performance. She didn't just make music. She opened dialogues that needed to happen. Her anguish became art. Her art became anthems. Her anthems became a movement. That's not just success. That's generational impact. And whether she releases 10 more albums or retires tomorrow, that impact is already cemented. If this story moved you, do 3 things. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me, what's your Billie Eilish moment? When did you first hear her music and realize someone finally understood? Because that's what this is all about. Connection, understanding, the recognition that we're all struggling with something, and pretending we're not doesn't help anyone. Billie Eilish, multiple Grammys, billions of streams, global icon. But more than all of that, a girl who refused to fake being okay, who turned her bedroom into a revolution, who showed millions of kids that their pain was valid, their voices mattered, and their darkness could be beautiful. The anguish that became a generation's anthem. Now you know the real story. The question is, what are you going to do with it? What pain are you carrying that could become something beautiful? What authenticity are you hiding that could connect with someone who needs to hear it? Because Billie's story isn't just about her. It's about all of us. It's about the choice between performing happiness and living truthfully. It's about the courage to be vulnerable in a world that demands perfection. It's about turning the things that hurt you into the things that heal you.